Hi there, I'm Claire, one of the pottery tutors at the Art Centre here, and this week I'm going to show you how to make a garden decoration. So we're going to make this flower head here. You can have it as just a decorational piece in the garden, or you can have it hanging to create a wind chime. The first consideration you would have to make is where it is going to go. If you're going to just have it hanging amongst your flower beds, you will need to get some strong gardening wire to create a little piece that can hook through here in order to go into the soil and hold it. And if you're hanging it up, you just need some strong string to attach to it. Okay, so first of all, we're going to do this from slab building. So we're going to roll out a piece of clay. So I've just taken a ball of clay and bashed it out a wee bit here. Do some of the work before you start rolling to make it easier for yourself. Okay, and I'm rolling on a sheet of canvas, but again, you could roll on any porous surface. So I'm just rolling out with my rolling pin, and I keep moving the clay and rolling it over, turning it over as I'm doing it, just to ensure that I'm getting an even thickness. Okay, if you feel that you're not very good at rolling out and it's a bit bumpy, you can use some wooden guides. As long as you've got two pieces of wood of the same thickness, and you can place them at either side and use that as a guide for your rolling pin. Okay, and that will ensure that it's the same thickness. So I'm going to keep rolling that out just till it's a wee bit thinner, but I've got one that I've already done here. So I'll just move this aside and show you. Okay, the reason I'd pre-prepared this is we need the clay to be leather hard and quite stiff to work with, so I've done that a wee bit earlier. The next thing I'm going to do is cut out a paper template to use, just to make sure I get the shape and the sizing right. So I've just used a circle to cut round here and cut it out. And then I'm just going to fold the paper in half. And then in quarter. I'm going to cut away just one of these quarter sections now. And that gives me a little paper maquette to work with for the size of the flower that I'm going to be using. I've done quite a big one, this will work out to this size, but obviously if you wanted to make lots of little smaller ones, you can just draw around something a bit smaller, like a plastic tub or something. Again, I'm just going to fold this back together again. And then fold it again. And this time I'm just going to cut out like a little kind of almost love heart shape. Okay, and that is going to give me a petal-like shape. And I'm just going to use as a template. So again, paper's a really good way to play around with and make sure that you've got all the sizes correct before you start cutting your clay. So I'm just going to lay the template now onto my piece of clay. Just smoothing it on, and then I'm just going to cut round that. Okay, you just want to be cutting onto a board or something that's not going to scratch any of your furniture or anything. Okay, I'm going to keep this wee bit of clay to use a wee bit later on. And any offcuts I've got, I can either just roll them back up, or if they've gone a bit hard, just pop them into a wee pot of water. You can either use it to make your slip or just break the clay down again and to reuse. Okay, so I want to join this together while it's still a bit flexible but stiff enough to hold its shape. So again, when I'm joining anything, I'm going to use my slip, my paintbrush for that, and we're going to score it and slip it to stick it down. So just scoring the edges together. And I'm just using a paintbrush to put on my slip. I want to make sure I've got it nice and thick and there's plenty there to stick it together. Okay, and then I'm going to press the edges together. This is where you'll want one of your modelling tools just to work at rubbing those two seams together to get them nice and smooth and make sure they're completely joined. Just using the end of the tool, and the clay is still soft enough, a wee bit of give in it, that I can smooth that all together. Just be careful not to lean too hard on it when you're doing it at this part, or you will cause it to collapse, so just be nice and gentle with my pressure. And really working over that seam to ensure that it doesn't open up again. Okay, so I've done it with my modelling tool, and I'm going to go back over it with my serrated edge kidney with the rough side first of all. And then with my smooth side. If you want to have the edges of this just floating out a little bit, you would make any changes or movement to it whilst the clay is still soft. So if I just kind of gently press down on those edges, just to gently kick them out a little bit. And again, it's really important to get a nice neat finish and no rough edges. So you can just take out some water and a little sponge, just dipping it in and squeezing out the excess water. I don't want it being too wet or it's just going to make the clay mushy. And just to be sure and go around and just neaten any edges. Spend a bit of time tidying it up just now and you'll have a really nice finish on it. Okay, so I'm going to pop this to one side for a wee minute and we'll work on creating the centre for it. So again, I've just done the same thing with a template, except I've used a smaller one this time. Okay, and again I'll just cut that out. keeping any scraps. Okay, I've just slightly nicked a wee bit there with my knife when I'm doing it at the wrong place, so again you can just use a tool just to smooth that over and correct any wee mistakes. Now this one I'm actually going to attach inside the flower, so I'm going to make sure that I get that nice and neat. Again, you can use my sponge or my rubber kidney. And just the same as we've done before, this is going to just join together. I'm going to score it. Just creates a nice texture for it to grip onto. Lots of slip. And just pressing together. And again, I'm going to go in with my little modelling tool and just use the end of it just to smooth this all together. Just using my fingers to push that join together. And again, just spending some time going over to make sure that that join is really well joined together and smooth that I can't see it. Again, I'm just going to go over with the rough edge of my serrated edge metal kidney and then using the smooth side. You can go over that with your brush with slip as well. Just tidying up all the edges, making sure they're not sharp. As I say, any sharp edges on clay, once it's fired, will become quite sharp and you can cut your finger on it. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that aside to dry as well. The little scraps that we've cut out from that there, I've hung on to those. I'm going to make some petals just to go on the outside. So I'm actually, because I'm joining this onto the piece of clay, I'm going to go a wee bit thinner. So the piece I've got, I'm just going to, you can just use your rolling pin again. And just get this clay a bit thinner. Okay, and again with the wee bit of paper that I've cut out, I'm not going to waste that either. Just going to cut out a little love heart kind of shape here. Okay, and just use those as some templates in the spare clay I've got here. So I'm going to cut out 3 of these. And I'll just use this other little spare bit of clay. You can see how much more easily I can handle the clay once it's dried out a little bit. Okay, another quite nice thing to do is to add some texture. A couple of ways you can do that. Again, you could use a comb or the edge of your kidney, serrated edge, and just do some lines into that. Or if you've got any other things lying about the house, that's just a butter pat that's got some texture in there. I can just add some lines on using this. Okay, so I'm just going to work on a board to stop my clay sticking to that. And I'll start to assemble everything now. So going back to my first piece. And I'm going to score with my kidney again. All inside that flower. So scoring across one way and then the other, making sure there's lots for the clay surface to grip onto. And then putting lots of slip in. Okay, and I'm going to score this outer side of this smaller one. and again more slip. And then I'm just going to press that inside. Again, I'm being quite firm, but you just want to be careful that you don't press too hard, that you're going to distort the shape of the whole thing. I just want to make sure that's all well stuck down. Okay, and again, you can just use your brush just to give everything a nice, just seal it all and give it a nice tidy up. Again, I'm working quite quickly doing this, but really just take your time and make a good job of it. Okay, and again, as that stiffens and gets a wee bit harder, you can just sponge it all down with your sponge and make sure that all the edges are nice and tidy. The other thing you can do is take a modelling tool, really one in there that's got a kind of sharper edge. There's quite a few of them have got point edges on them. And if you want to, you can just do some little lines. Again, it's just adding some more texture and detail onto your piece. Okay, and I'm just going to pop this down just now and work on the outside of it. So with these little kind of love heart shapes that we've cut out, I'm just going to score the back of those. And just score the outside. Before you score and put them down, you know, you can just have a play about with where you're going to attach them. And they're quite nice if you make even quite a few smaller ones, but you can create like a kind of fairy garden going on out in your garden, or even take them, you know, to woods that you like to visit and create a nice wee space. Just something nice to look at. So I'm just pressing that on there and just being very careful, but I'm just folding that over. And you can only really do this part when the clay is still quite soft and get a wee bend to it. If it's too hard, you'll not really be able to bend it over, it will just snap off. And then these bits, as they dry, will become really, really fragile. Again, anything I'm attaching, just making sure it's really well scored and slipped. You can use your tool as well just to wrap the petal, or the leaf I should say, around that and just create a nice little roll. Just tuck it under. And again, like same as everything else, just using my brush to just go round that, make sure all the edges are nicely stuck down and tidied up. This will also take away any of the scoring marks that we don't actually need to see now. Give it all a nice tidy up. Okay, what I'm now going to do is create a wee hanging loop on it, but before I do that I'm just going to put a hole through it because I'm going to use this one as a wind chime. So just going through the top. You could use the end of a paintbrush or just using one of your modelling tools here, so I've just twisted that as I'm popping it through. Okay, and this is where all your little scraps from earlier come in handy. Just pop that to one side for now. So just a wee scrap from earlier on. Just cutting off a rectangular piece, or again you can take just a softer piece of clay if you want and roll a coil to do this. I've rolled a coil and I'm just going to flatten it ever so slightly. And then just creating a wee twist, a wee loop in that. And either side of that will be able to attach on. Like joining handles or anything on, once I create the loop, really I want to let that stiffen and get leather hard before I attach it on. Okay, so I'm going to just go with this one that had been rolled out because that's a wee bit stiffer. So again, scoring. I like to use my serrated edge kidney when I'm scoring large surface areas. If you're doing anything that's a bit smaller, then your knife's fine. Sometimes it's easier to use your knife for smaller areas. Again, I'm just going to cross hatch and score where this is going to stick on, and plenty of slip. If you find your slip's getting too thick, just add some more water or some white vinegar to it just to break it down and make it a wee bit more sticky. I just always add to my slip pot with all the offcuts and things that I've got and some more water and just soak it down for next time. So just popping that on top. Again, I don't want to be too firm with this that I'm going to squash all the nice work that you've just done, but just pressing it down, making sure it's well stuck on. Just spotted some little fine hairline cracks on this little piece of clay just because it was a wee bit drier, so I'm just slipping the whole thing, or you could sponge it just to make sure that those cracks don't worsen and make the whole thing kind of fragile and crack. So just giving the whole thing a nice tidy up. And I will go back to that when it's a wee bit stiffer and give the whole thing a nice sponge and tidy up. But I'm just going to leave it to stiffen and sit at one side. And then I'm going to work on just making the pieces for the inside of it to be a wind chime. So you could just have one bit hanging down, or you could make a few different bits that will all clang off each other and make some noise. So again, just a softer piece of clay. Just starting off with a ball to begin with. I've just done some different sizes there. What I'm going to do now is roll it at one end and not the other till I get almost like a kind of teardrop kind of shape. I'm just creating like a kind of cone shape with my hands. That one's just gone a little bit thin there. Okay, so I'll just snap that off. Another way you can do these is just to do some coils. But we want to be able to get some string through that to be able to hang them. So you want them to be thick enough that we can actually put a tool in the middle of them. So I've got my needle here, pop that in. Okay. Or you can use a thin paintbrush just to make sure that that goes all the way through. Okay. And just pushing that all the way through. So as I say, you can do one or you could do a few of these in all different lengths. The other thing you could do with any wee kind of offcuts that you've got, you could just cut like a rectangular shape and then just roll it up slightly, as long as something that the thread or string can get through. If you wanted some longer ones hanging out of it. Okay, and then you're just going to leave it, the whole thing, to dry and give it a nice sponge and tidy it up, and then you can have fun painting it up with some coloured slips. You can paint it any colour, you could do some decoration or some spots or anything on it. It doesn't need to, you can just let your imagination go. And then once that's all been fired, we can then show you at a later stage how we assemble it all together.